that what you do impacts the people around you.
Right.
Right? And that same thing with acting, right? It's all about, it's not just about you. It's not about you. It's about everybody. It's about the project. Like, even in the moment when we're filming something, like, if only I'm on camera, sure, I'm the one on camera, but I have to be conscious of the guy who's operating the camera. I can't just do whatever the hell I want and not tell him, because he's not going to know. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you got to be aware. You got to put everybody in consideration, while also, though, owning who you are in that moment with what your job is. Right?
You are Eric Klingbeil, and this is the unseen word.
My guest today is Jessica Miesel. Jessica is an amazing human being. I've known Jessica for years now. Jessica is a fantastic actor, a fantastic coach. In fact, she was a coach here at Catapult Acting for a while, up until she booked a role, a pretty amazing role, in fact. She can be seen in projects like Misfits and Monsters, Office Christmas Party, The Purge. But Jessica is most well known for her role on Fox's The Resident, where she plays Nurse Jessica Moore. I can't wait for you to hear Jessica's journey. She is such a wonderful human being, and we really went on a wild ride in this one. We laughed, we cried, literally all of it, and I'm just so grateful that Jessica was willing to share her journey with us. There's one thing specifically, and maybe we can even start with that, and it's when you talked about what is it that actors really need to know? What is the thing that I think and you correct me if I'm wrong, but is maybe one of the most important components of this industry is you do you, boo.
No, that's right. I used to say I still say that. Yes.
Yeah. But especially with the young actors, right? Because we did a camp together.
We did.
Yeah, I sent that video from a while back. That was so fun.
That's
and and I love that about you, though, because you are someone who I feel embodies that, and you are such a great example of someone who is who she is. And I think if more people could do that, if they could embrace that, it would be a beautiful thing. So tell me a little bit about that, about the you do you and the where that came from. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the hard part. I mean, I think that's really where, like, that's harder, I think, than any acting technique, right? To, like, learn how to be comfortable in your own skin. And I don't know ultimately how you teach that, but I can say I think a lot of it boils down to people are so concerned about what other people are thinking, right? And I've never really been like that, even as a kid. Like when you were talking about like how like you just kind of like do your own thing. This is probably a very inappropriate story, but I think it really does kind of sum up how I've always been. So I'm telling it for the story, not for like the moral. Okay. So in 6th grade, when I was like 12 years old, I grew up in Conyers, Georgia, which is, especially...
I'm familiar.
Yeah, especially at the time, it was like very country town, right? And so in 6th grade, they had us sign these little hearts, okay, that were like true love weights, right? Where we had to sign this thing in 6th grade that we promised to wait until we were married before we took part in events that happen between a man and a woman or your partner. And even at 12 years old, I was like, no.
Wait, what?
I didn't sign it. I refused. When I was 12 years old, I was like, I'm not going to sign this because it's silly and it felt wrong to me, right? And so, like, even in my little 12-year-old mind, I was so focused. I've always led, I think, with what feels right and with what doesn't feel right. Regardless of what other people, and I'm not talking about like if it affects somebody else, right? But in terms of like what's true to me and my compass within that, I've always I'm like, no, that feels weird. I don't like it. I'm not going to do it. Or this feels really good, so I'm going to do that. And I think that also then carries over when you're in an audition and you're in a scene and you go with your instinct about what feels right, what doesn't feel right in terms of that character, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. I don't want to just tell that story and then walk away from it yet.
Okay.
So
Wasn't sure. I was like, is that
it's a wonderful story. No, we're not worried about that.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
yeah. Okay, so I just want to go back. So, do you recall, as your 12-year-old self, when you said, "I'm not signing this"?
Yes.
I this is a strong commitment. I don't think.
It's a lot of pressure to commit to as a 12-year-old.
Do you remember how that was met by the teachers, or what happened?
I do remember.
What?
Because we were sitting in class and they passed out the hearts to each of us, our little rows.
I'm just imagining
His little face. And like the thing is I've always been, especially as a kid, I was painfully shy.
Oh.
So shy. It wasn't until I probably like 18, 19 that I started to be a little more outgoing. And so I think I remember the teachers being very surprised because they explained what it was, right? They were standing up, they were like, "So true love, we wait till," and I remember distinctly. I remember who was sitting next to me, and I remember sitting there and listening to them, and I remember thinking like, this doesn't feel right. This just feels like I was uncomfortable with it. It felt weird. And I remember like she went around to pick up the hearts because they were gonna place them all over the cafeteria on the walls.
Okay.
And I remember being like, she's like, "Jessica, you didn't sign it." And I remember saying like, "I know, I don't want to. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna sign it." "And what do you say?" She goes, "Okay."
Did your heart still go up on the wall?
No.
Oh, yeah, no heart.
No heart, no name, nothing. I was proud of that.
You want to know who doesn't have a heart up there?
Me. And I remember my friend being like, "That's horrible. That's really wrong." And I was like, okay. I mean, I just was like, I don't feel that it is.
Oh, so you got some flack even at that age. Like,
because,
hey.
well, unfortunately, it was very based in religion at the time.
Sure.
And growing up in a small country town, right, that definitely influenced, I think, a lot of the people around me. And I'm from Chicago. Like, my family's from Chicago, so it just wasn't something that we experienced a lot of. So that always made me uncomfortable, right? This, like, kind of just, the church in general, honestly, made me very uncomfortable. But I got a lot of flack because of that.
Yeah.
That's what it was based on.
Yeah. So that's great. I love that story. I love that story. That's so fun.
Because to me that's, and I've always been like that.
Yeah, I wish I could have had like a camera on little 12-year-old Jessica, right? And they say, okay, so here's what we're gonna do, and your little face.
You see
the
the
reaction.
wheels turning of like, wait a second.
Wait a minute. I don't know if I'm ready to make that commitment.
Yeah, I just was like,
and I'm sure as heck not ready to share it with the whole cafeteria.
Right. And I remember telling my mom about it because I think a teacher ended up saying something to my mom or something about it, and I think she was like so proud of me.
Oh, I love it.
Because she was just like, good for you.
Oh,
like,
I love it.
if that feels,
yeah,
wrong or whatever, like that's okay.
So let's talk about mom.
Mm-hmm.
Mom, dad.
Yeah.
Who obviously they influenced you in some capacity. And I think our parents do, whether they're there or not there.
Yes,
or
absolutely.
I know my parents definitely had an influence on me. I talk a lot about how the dynamic between the two of them. If I look at the person I've become, it's fascinating to look at what they infused in my mind.
Yeah.
So you said you grew up in Chicago then before that? Or you were from Chicago?
I'm from Chicago.
What does that mean?
I was born there.
Okay.
But I didn't live there for very long. I don't remember it. I went back up a lot because my family lives there, my aunts, uncles. My parents, my mom, lived there her whole life, basically.
Okay.
So we're very rooted. Like, I feel like my roots are in Chicago.
Got it.
But I did grow up here in Georgia.
But so when you were saying Chicago, it's more of the Chicago mentality versus Conyers, Georgia mentality.
Yes, absolutely.
In terms of just ideology and life experience.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you at 12 were making strong decisions, right? Mm-hmm. Throughout your career, I know in talking to you, throughout your career, you've made, I think, a lot of choices that are admirable as a creative. In terms of your parents, what was it like? What were they like? What when you were a kid? What was your relationship like? What were some of the things that maybe you think they infused into little Jessica?
I mean, obviously the biggest thing is that they allowed me to be like a free thinker, but I was always taught to be very considerate of the people around me, right? So it's not about just doing it whatever you want. Doesn't matter how it affects the people around you. No. Like leading with a moral compass, but also maintaining compassion and empathy for the people around me, and knowing that my actions and how I interact with them, it's going to impact the people around me. Right? And so that I think I'm almost to the too far extreme where I'm always thinking about other people in the way of how can I help or what could, and so and sometimes I think especially in today's world that can really eat at you, right? And so that can be hard, but I'd rather lead with that than with somebody who just dismisses the world, right? But my mother also, though, my mom's very similar. She is incredibly independent. She is, she's just a very, she's very sweet. Like, don't get me wrong, she's incredibly sweet and bubbly. But she doesn't need anybody else. And so she raised me to be incredibly independent. And maybe I've leaned a little too far over this way because I take such pride in doing things on my own and accomplishing things on my own. But sometimes we need other people, though, to lean on. And I think that's where sometimes it's hard for me, right? And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I acknowledge that. And I think my dad has just always been always been my biggest fan. And he's just like, yeah, buddy, like, whatever, like, great. Like, it's like whatever I choose to do, he's there. He's there to support me, and he's excited for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fascinating, right? Because to have someone who instills in you the concept that you should be free, you should express your thoughts, your feelings, you should be mindful of those around you, and then simultaneously having someone who's almost like your cheerleader.
Yeah.
Right? Who's like, yes, like you do you, boo.
Yeah.
And then mom's like, and here's how you do it.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, and you can do it on your own. Proud of you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating. That's cool. Okay, so you said you were painfully shy.
Yes.
Right, which is fascinating to me because I don't think anybody would in this current version of you think of you as shy at all.
No.
Right.
No.
So what happened?
I don't know. I think back. I think I've always been funny. But I don't think I realized it. I remember when I was really little, like my Aunt Jackie in particular, she just thought I was so funny. But I thought she was like laughing at me as opposed to finding me funny. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I remember always being like self-conscious about that. And so I didn't get it. Like I was like, why are people laughing? And so like I think that it kind of, but I think a lot of the reason I was so painfully shy, I've talked about my struggle with anxiety. It is extreme. And I think that when I was young, I've never known a moment without it. My entire life, I've never known a moment without anxiety. I cannot imagine what that would be like. I think I would just pass out. I don't even know. Just from relief. Like, it's so sad. But even as a baby, like a very young kid, I remember always having it. And so I think that before we really knew what was going on with me in terms of with that, I was so hyper aware of the world around me and of the people around me and every noise and every emotion, everything. I think that I was almost overstimulated by classrooms and by other students. And so I think that's what caused me to, just kind of shut down a little bit.
Yeah,
you know.
the turtle head or back in the
Yeah,
shell.
I mean, granted, I didn't miss a thing, right? Like, and I'm still like that. Nothing gets past me. Like, I pick up on every little thing, right?
Right.
And I think as a kid, that can be a lot, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, you know, obviously I've thought about it. Therapy sessions, we've talked about it. But I think that's probably a lot of why my shyness was so overwhelming. But then when I remember getting to college and I suddenly was around.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Because you just skipped from.
I skipped a lot of years.
Yeah, because we talked about 12, so we understand the independent
Yes.
12-year-old, the shy 12-year-old who's
Yes.
still willing to make choices about
Yes. True love waits.
true love waits.
Yeah.
You just have it down. Like,
Oh,
you
yeah.
remember it vividly.
True love waits.
True love waits.
Y'all.
True love waits, y'all. So what about high school?
High school was interesting.
I love that word. It's such a fascinating word.
It's a lot, right?
Interesting.
It's complicated.
It's loaded,
It
but
is loaded
but
with-
it's very. It works really well.
It does.
But it can mean a variety of things.
Yes, and it definitely. I think high school was a variety of things. I can look back as the person I am now. I almost can look back at myself at 18, and it's like I'm looking at somebody else, in a way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it's like I kind of can look over and see me in high school, and I see it in a completely different way now than I did when I was in high school. If that makes sense.
Yeah. How did you see it in high school?
I saw it as people didn't like me. I just thought nobody liked me in high school. But I look back on it and that was not at all what was happening. I think that sometimes, because I've always had an ability to sing, right? That was something that I started doing when I was in 4th grade. And I just naturally know how to do it. I don't know why. It's just something I think I was born with. And in high school, I did it a lot. I did a lot of competitions. I won a lot of state things. Like in high school, it was like a big deal, right? And I was a talented kid. I can look back at 18-year-old me and acknowledge. I watched this video recently of myself singing. My mom, I didn't watch. My mom put it on, and I was like, "What are we doing?" But it was at my high school graduation, and I sang, and I'm watching myself, and I was like, "What? What?"
Because you were so good?
I was so good. I mean, I literally I was like, who is this child?
Which is, by the way, the opposite of what most people, when they look back at, like,
Yeah. No.
you just, right, but you don't remember it that way
Not
per
like
se.
that.
Interesting.
I mean, I remember after I was like, she's like, I told you, it's something. And I was like, who is this 18-year-old kid? I mean, like, I was blown away by myself. And but I don't remember it that way. But I think what can happen, I think when you do have it, and I don't want to make it sound as though I'm like, because again, I'm looking at it from a completely different perspective now. Mm-hmm. But I think when you have a talent like that, I think sometimes other people don't like you.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it makes it hard. And sometimes kids were mean to me when I would get the lead in the musical, or I would, whatever. My friends were not very nice about it. And that was hard.
What do you remember any specific situations that stand out where, like, you did, where you got a nice role or something like that, and it was met with?
Yeah, I mean, it happened a lot. A lot. I remember my senior year, I had gotten a musical called The Fantastics.
Okay.
It's great. It's a great piece. The music is beautiful. And there's only one girl on the show. And it was very challenging vocally. And I worked really hard to get it. Like, I worked on the music for so long before the audition. Like, I never went in with any expectation of anything. It wasn't about that. I really loved it, and I really wanted it. And I worked really hard to get those things. But I remember after that happened, a group of girls went to a teacher who was the director of the show that cast me and tried to say that I was conceited and that I didn't deserve it and all of these things. And it caused a whole stir. It was like very, 18 years old, very traumatic, right? But the things they were saying were completely fabricated. Like they were not, and it was very hard. It felt very isolating at times. Because I didn't understand. Looking back on it, I can also see I was actually a very sweet kid. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was kind of quiet and just sweet, and I just loved music, and I just loved to sing, and I just wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It never was for the applause. It was because I really loved it, and
you had a gift though too.
Yeah.
It's not to take things down a dark road, but I mean, obviously this week has been an intense week. Mm-hmm. I think obviously it's so hard to wrap your brain around things like this tragedy that happens to me, right? There's and there are horrible things happening all the time everywhere, right?
Sure.
But it's just like anything. The closer it is to home, and for me, outside of my home with my family, this is my home here at Catapult. And we work with young people of all ages. And this is a sacred space. And I think about, obviously, these children, right? And I think about them, and it's just horrific, right? And now Venice is 5, right? And Violet's 2. And, and I just think about their faces, and I keep playing in my mind, and it's not good, but it's like I think about these children and their faces and, like, what was happening and the fear. And it's weird, and I question humanity, and I question, bringing children up in the world, and, all of these things, right? But I also think about the kid who did it. Because he's a kid. He was in high school. I mean, he's 18, but he's a kid.
Yeah.
And he was a kid who clearly had a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And the more that you learn about him, the more it becomes just very clear.
Yeah.
And I think about how we all have gifts to offer the world. But for so many of us, we're never made aware of it.
Yeah.
Or it's stifled.
Yeah.
We're told that it's stupid or wrong. And then my belief is, for some people, they are, the things inside of them that they want to share so much are so pushed down or made fun of that it has this polarity to it, where that gift or the things about them becomes infused with hatred and pain and venom. And I think it's why I love this thing that we do in terms of creativity. Because I think about someone like you, who's so talented. And I know, for you, it's, you're much better at giving praise and you know what I mean? And like versus, I think you acknowledge who you are, but even like a couple times you've already said, well, like, I always want to make sure the other people, right? So you're always thinking about others. Yeah. And I think that's great. But I also think it's important for us to own who we are. And for so many people, they're never given permission to do that. Yeah. Not that we need permission, but as a child, it's not nurtured.
Right.
And it's fitting in with everyone.
Yes.
And here you were, this unbelievably talented kid. Clearly, I mean, for someone who's critical of yourself. Yeah. Yes. I mean, everything I've known about you in terms of your work ethic and all of it, to look at your high school self and go, damn, that was good. That's obviously a very honest reaction.
Yeah.
But how interesting to think about that talent, that skill set was literally just being met with a lot of hatred.
Yeah.
And so much negativity.
Yeah.
And I think for me, one of my personal goals is like, how do we shift that?
Mm-hmm.
How do we shift this concept of if you're different, it's wrong, to if you're different, it's right?
Yeah.
Because we are different.
Yeah.
And I think I do believe we all have our own gifts.
Yeah.
And if we are able to embrace those, I think that's how we really live.
Yeah.
I think that's how we can fully live, by embracing it, who it is that we are, so then we can help others and give. But if we can never do that, it's such a challenging situation. And so, I mean, this is where I really, when we think about these tools of the actor, I'm like, why am I doing this podcast, right? To come back to that a little bit, because you had asked me that earlier.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I believe that what we are learning and teaching in the acting room, these tools, these ideas, these philosophies, if more people knew about them, I think the world would be a different place.
Completely different.
I think about that kid.
Yeah.
I think about...
If he had had a place to go, that somebody said,
hey,
you're okay as you are. Or, do you need some help? Like, let me help you.
real help.
Yeah.
Not like, hey, we're going to send you to some psychiatrist because we have to, just to check a box.
Yeah.
But somebody to go, and somebody to listen.
Exactly. I was going to say, are you okay?
Yeah.
What's going on? And, like, I'll be honest, the idea of somebody like that, it feels so big to me. It feels, to think about somebody who could go in and do something like that, that feels like a huge thing. And so it's like, when does that start?
Right.
When do we, like, someone should have asked him, how are you doing 15 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
And listen, I don't want to talk about guns, honestly, because my rage about that is I've been so angry this week, and anger is such an uncomfortable position for me to be in. It's not a feeling I experience very often. So I don't think I can talk about it if there's any difference in opinion, because then I get mad, and I don't want to do that. That's not what this is about today.
Yeah.
But I think as far as how we treat other people, people are so cruel. And yes, the kid that went in and did that, true. But the people that obviously made him feel like shit are so cruel. And so then I asked myself, what's wrong with them? Were those people that were mean to him? You know what I mean? It's just, it's a never-ending thing of just bullying and cruelty. And, like, we can blame social media. We can do all the things. But there's something rotten going on with so many people. And, like, I think that people bully another kid so that they can impress this other kid.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't, it's so big. It feels so big to me. And it hurts. And, like, especially somebody like me, I've never understood that. If I saw somebody, and if I was in high school and if I saw a kid being picked on, I would say, stop. I would say, what are you doing? Stop. Don't do that. And so, like, but I was raised to be like that. Or maybe not. Maybe it's always been, I think that's actually always been at my core. I think I was born with that ability to look at somebody and wonder how they're doing and really want to know, you know? And then I think in the acting world, we nurture that. Right? I mean, that to me, I mean, being an actor, it's you're an emotional athlete, right? Like, it's all about giving and receiving. It's all about looking somebody in the eye and really trying to see what's going on behind the eyes. And trying to, like, reflect something that they're feeling. And I don't know, the average person doesn't know how to do that. They don't do that. We're so turned off.
Yes. I think it's because, well, there's obviously, it's not, okay, this is why.
Right.
Right? So it's like, even when you were talking about guns and all of that, there's so much.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's big.
Huge.
And I think one of the biggest problems we have as society, it's like, well, are you this or that?
Yeah.
Is it this or that? Is
Yeah.
it this or that?
Yeah.
And that's not life.
Right.
Life isn't this or that. It's
Right.
just like amalgamation of things, and
Yeah.
it's up and it's down. It's happy and it's sad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm satisfied and I want more.
Mm-hmm.
It's this sort of, it's that. And so I think about it all the time, right?
Yeah.
Not to make myself seem like a good person, not to try to say that, but
We'll
so-
see that you're doing what I did, though.
Yeah,
Where you're
no.
like, no, I'm going to justify.
Well, I just, yeah. Well, here, I
But,
just.
yeah.
But here's the thing. So, I've now had 2 reunions because I'm in my 40s. So we had a 10-year
Yes.
and a 20-year.
Uh-huh.
And at my 10-year reunion, one of the students came up to me, and I wasn't really sure who he was, you know, and but is the case, right? I mean, even people that I hung out with, I didn't totally remember everyone. But he came up to me and he said, "Hey, Eric," and he told me who he was, and he's, "Hey, I just want to let you know, you know, in high school, a lot of people weren't nice to me." And he said, "You were always nice to me." It's like, every time I see you, you're always nice to me. And I remember just standing there thinking to myself, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
You know, because I was a lot of things in high school. I mean, I wouldn't say I was a mean person, but I was kind of a mess. Like, I wasn't like the one where they're like, this is who you want to be like, this guy.
Right,
It was more like, you think he's going to make it through? You think he's actually going to get to that? Yeah. But when I heard that, I remember thinking, wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
What a cool thing.
Yeah.
That this young version of me, who was kind of a mess,
Yeah.
at least had the wherewithal
To be kind.
to be kind.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell it is that just being mean and
Yeah.
being like, I don't know what it is. And it's like you said, people aren't bullying someone because that's like, they're doing it. There's something there. And it's like, I'm trying to impress this person.
Yep.
But then it's like, why? What is this? Is that what that person wants? And if it is what they want,
Yeah.
why do we do that?
Yeah.
It is a fascinating thing, our species, and,
Yeah.
and how these things transpire.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are many components in terms of media. Social media has
Yes.
changed everything. The internet has changed everything. But like you said, even when we were young, there were still bullies. There were still people. You know, it's just it's adapted to the current environment. But it's still, these things happen. And yeah, you know, I think for me, it's one of the biggest whys in life.
Yeah.
Right? We have all these different whys, but for me, one of the biggest whys is, why do we treat people poorly?
Yeah.
Like, what is it? Like, what is it about us as a species?
Yeah.
Now, of course, there's a lot of good, but yeah. And what I think is, for many of us, if we're not given a mom who, like, because you were saying, like, it's always been in me, right? But if it wasn't given, like we were talking about earlier, the fertilizer,
Yeah.
if it wasn't given the components needed to be
Yeah.
nurtured and grow,
Yeah.
who knows?
Right.
Who knows, right? You were talking about all the anxiety that you've had, right? Well, what if you match that with a mom who tells you you're wrong?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows, right? Then it's like,
You
and,
know.
or who like makes fun of you when you're singing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then you have this gift, and you think it's you're stupid or this or that, and then
Yeah.
anxiety and all of these components come into play.
Yeah.
You know, but I do think it can be learned.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think that, because using my mom as an example, she grew up, her childhood was not good. It was bad. But she grew up to be just one of the most, I mean, she's my favorite person in the whole world. Like, you're not going to meet a more generous, kind, thoughtful person ever, who's also incredibly strong. And I can tell you, she didn't learn that from where she grew up. And I don't really know where she learned it. I think she saw what she grew up with, and she said, I don't want to be like that. I'm going to go over here. And some people aren't capable of doing that, I guess. I don't know, but you know, you can, you go one way or the other, I guess. I have another girlfriend who's, you know, I've known since college, and she's fantastic. Also grew up in a very unstable home. And she and I are very similar. She's just like always thinking of other people and just overwhelmed with empathy and kindness for the people around her. And she didn't learn that necessarily from her home.
Yeah.
So what is it? Again, that's where it goes. I go, oh, it's so
big.
It's so big.
It's too much to
so
fathom.
big.
But yeah, it is interesting. I remember reading a very interesting statistic in terms of if they were looking at like 100 of the most successful people of the last 50 years, and anything from politicians to entertainers, musicians. But they found there was this staggering high rate of these successful individuals who lost a parent before the age of 12. And so it just got me thinking about that. So like it was much higher than what like the national average is, right? So you're thinking, okay, well, there's got to be a thread here. And so one of the things I was thinking about is maybe by being met with such adversity at such a young age, they, in their psyche, they said to themselves, I can overcome this. I can overcome this thing. Well, then this is nothing. I lost a parent. I lost a parent. And because they went through such a challenging situation, it strengthened them. It strengthened these things inside of them, and in turn allowed them and actually catalyzed the wonderful, amazing individual they have become.
Maybe it forces you to grow up. I don't know.
Sure. Forces you to grow up and also to go in.
Yes. You see the world in a completely different way, I would imagine.
Right. Now, of course, it could go the opposite way too.
Sure. You're just angry.
You're just angry, and you're resentful, and you're bitter. So then, then of course we could dive into, well, why is that? Yeah. Why is it that some people then, like they both had horrible childhoods, and both of them maybe were similar individuals? Well, that's what's fascinating too when they look at twins and how different twins can be.
Literally the same genetics.
Yeah, literally the same genetics, the same upbringing, and they went in totally different paths. It's like, why?
Yeah.
Why would that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is interesting. But one thing and then of course, so it's so big, right?
Yeah.
So then I always love this concept, start with one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Start with one. It's just too much. There's all of this. Okay, what's one good thing you could do? Right, so I just sent out an email today to all of our clients. I
saw. I think I got it right before, right? About just your thoughts on everything going on.
Yeah. And but one of the components there was like, I was like, well, what can I do as a leader?
Yes.
Right? What can I do? Because I hate listening to leaders talk about, and leaders, we're going to use some major quotes on leaders, because if we think of leadership and the attributes that make a leader, I don't know if I would call them leaders as much as puppets.
Yes.
Right? And greedy corporate robot, right? They are in leadership positions, but nonetheless, listening to them, this just can't happen. We need to, it's like, but you're the one in charge of it not happening. You're the one in charge of doing the things that could make it where this might. So when I think of myself in that leadership position, I was thinking about it. And last night I was writing that email. And I was thinking, well, what is it that we do here? What do we do? And I think what we do is we teach people how to strengthen their empathy. That is a core component of what we do.
Yeah.
Empathy, it's a word that is used here all the time, everywhere. Empathize, empathetic listening, empathy. And so I was thinking, okay, well, how can I take this atrocity and find some kind of gift in it? Find something. And so I think, this is where when we are met with these challenging situations, there is an opportunity to look inward. And there is an opportunity to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to do something more.
Yep.
And for us, I really, like we said earlier, listening. Just making a conscious choice to say, I'm going to just listen to someone. I'm going to maybe someone I disagree with. I'm going to listen to them. And I'm going to see maybe what comes out of that. Because I do feel like that is such an important part of this acting room.
Yeah.
You're taught how to listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to. You literally cannot do this job
Without being able to listen.
without being able to listen.
Yeah.
Honestly listen.
Yeah.
Empathetically listen.
Yes.
You've got to feel. If you have an actor that's not feeling and not listening,
What are we doing?
What are we doing? You're not.
Yeah.
I'm not watching that.
Right.
So I've seen it.
Yeah, me too.
It's not good.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so I think about that, and that's what I think is so cool in terms of what's happening in this room and what can be shared with others.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating with you, though, too, because I remember you saying that it was a life coach, right? Who you had worked with that really instilled and this is where it's almost like there's the tools of the acting room that can be taught to those out of it, and then there's the tools of life that can be taught to the actors, which can then be applied in the acting room.
Yes.
And so I think that's a fascinating thing, because can you tell me a little bit about your journey? So because I'm just so fascinated. I love your journey because I remember you telling me about it and what it was like in New York. And that face right there. Yeah, if anybody's just listening to this, it wasn't a happy, cheery face.
It was just interesting. We go back to the word interesting. It was an interesting time.
Yeah, so you got your 18-year self, because then you said in college is when something happened.
College was fantastic. I loved I loved it. Because
and you said that's when things shifted for you.
I think I found my people. I think that I finally, I was surrounded by people who I understood and who I felt also understood me, and where I didn't need to feel self-conscious about, I mean, again, we actors, right? It was a bunch of actors, and I think that actors are naturally just accepting people, generally speaking. And not that I was like particularly strange or anything like that, but I think there's just an unapologetic way in which we can kind of live our lives a lot of the time, right? And I found people around me who were really funny, and I was able to go, because I was a musical theater major, so you're double like voice and theater.
And where did you go to school? What was the name of school?
So, it's called Shorter College. Now it's Shorter University. It is literally a complete 180 from what it was when I was there.
Oh, okay.
Literally.
Okay.
Now it's more of like a, it's like...
I love your mannerisms. Like, I could just, like, mute and, like, although I love your voice, too, but, like, just watch your face. And all of the things that are happening.
I can't hide it.
Yeah.
It's a very religious school now.
Okay.
It's more of like a seminary school, which is shocking because when I was there, I mean, it's shocking just the way it's changed. But at the time when I was there, it was considered like the best music school in the Southeast. It was just it was a great program. It was great. It was a small school, but it was great. And so anyway, I was able to go, and I didn't need to feel embarrassed, or I needed to hide my ability to sing. I was able to go and be around and be in my voice lesson, and it was something that people were like, cool, that's good, because I was around other people who also could do that. And so there was just this like sense of community, or this sense of, and it wasn't always perfect. I mean, you're still in a competitive atmosphere. But I finally was able to just like literally free my voice. Like literally, I think that's what it was. Like I was just finally able to sing. I think that's when I think about that's the root of it. I was finally able to sing in a way that didn't feel hindered by it or judged by it. It was just embraced. And I think that rolled over into being able to kind of lean more into like comedy and all of that. It just kind of opened up the doors, I think, to really letting myself relax a little bit and just do what it is I love to do.
Okay, so that's cool. Yeah, that's such an interesting thing to it allowed your voice to release.
Literally, I've never thought of it that way, but I think that's what happened. I think I finally was able to I just was able to sing, and that was what I loved more than anything in the whole world. Nothing made me happier, and I was able to do it, and I did it every day, all day. What a joy.
Right.
Like, what a joy.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting the verbiage you use, too, is fascinating that you say, I was finally allowed to do it.
Yeah.
Now, you know, of course you were technically allowed to do it prior to that. But again, I think coming back to this concept of giving someone permission to be who they were, right? You were not only given permission, it was...
I had to.
Yeah, yeah.
For my grades.
Right. Yeah. So you go through, so that's kind of where, all right, the shy Jessica starts to, her voice is released. I just think of like Little Mermaid or something, just like, oh.
Hair.
Yeah, and so your voice is released. You kind of finding your tribe.
Yes.
So what's next then? What happens next there on the journey?
So, you know, it's interesting. I also think back, I've always been a very, like, you know, kind of shy kid, but I think I got a little too confident. Right? Not necessarily where I was mean to anybody else, but I think I had this kind of view where I was like, I got the lead in college, so clearly Broadway is the next logical step. And, like, I don't think I really understood. I just, you know, you're 22 and you're like, yeah, let's go to New York City. Like, totally, like, never having experienced it. Growing up in Conyers, Georgia, going to a small private college where it was great and my training was exceptional, you know, but the leap then was jarring, right? To go from college to New York. And I think New York has, I've always said this, I think New York has a very fascinating way of completely demolishing who you are. Completely just breaks you down to just little pieces. And then you have the opportunity then to rebuild yourself. Some people kind of remain broken, I think, from New York, which I hate, but I didn't let it do that. Right? It did it. But I was able to, I grew a spine while I was in New York. I think that's the one thing that New York taught me.
Which is one heck of a tool to have in TV film as well.
Yes, and I think that I became I became more comfortable with auditioning. Yeah. Because I had to do it all the time.
Right.
You should walk.
You can say you're a fantastic auditioner.
Well, sometimes I don't do it much anymore now. I'm like, geez, like, you know.
Yeah, well, that's okay. Yeah. Because you're working as an actor.
Right, but...
Right.
But yeah, but I learned how to audition. I learned how to be comfortable in the room. Yeah. Right? And New York also forced me to take the things that I didn't like about myself and see them as an asset as an actor. And I think that that's the one thing that actors need to realize is that the things that, whether you have a crooked tooth or whether you're, you know, like I'm a bigger girl, like whatever, these things that we don't maybe like about ourselves in our day-to-day life, you have to be able to use them, and they are an asset. They are a selling point when you're an actor. Because the one thing I hear from casting directors, and I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of them over the years, they all say to me, I like you because you're different. I like you because you're different. There's no one else I've seen like that. You know, it's celebrated. Instead of me being like, oh, I need to lose a lot of weight, I need to fix my tooth, and you know, which, okay, I can do that if I want to, if that's what I feel like I need for myself. But nobody should do those things in the hopes that they're going to book more roles. Someone out there may disagree with me. I just don't think that makes any sense.
I am 100% on that train. Yeah. Well, and I think because I've always loved this concept, and I don't remember where I first heard it, but there's one thing missing from the industry that you have any control over, and it's you. Yeah. It's the only thing.
Yeah, literally.
The only thing that is currently missing from the industry that you have total control over is you. The authentic version of who you are. Yeah. And you know, you were just referencing actors and how in acting you've got to learn how to embrace what makes you different. But it's like, we can just remove acting.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like we can just say it's the thing that makes you different that is going to allow you to excel, I think, and really live.
I will say, I can't sit here and say totally, because I don't know, I can't say that I do that in my everyday to day life. I have not been able to transition that when it comes to dating, for example. I have not embraced every part of myself to accept it, that it's going to be accepted in the dating world. And the thing is like, maybe who I am isn't always going to be accepted in the acting world, but for whatever reason, I don't give a shit about that. Because I choose to be around people who embrace me but I can't seem to be able to do it. I always use dating as an example, because that's the one area of my life that's challenging. And I don't know why that is. But it's, again, though, we go back to, I'm more concerned about what that person's thinking than I am about how I feel.
Right. Well, I would say that my hypothesis for you, you're really good at acting. You're a great performer. And so you have found it's by embracing all of you in that it has shown you success.
Yes.
And it's shown you that is a good path to take. I think doing it in our regular life is a lot harder.
So much harder.
Because you can still look at actor, performer Jessica as something outside of yourself.
Yeah.
Of course it is you. We understand that. But this is a thing. This is and to do that at home, I mean, for me, it's like I teach people the importance of listening, and simultaneously, I am not a great listener. I am not, like, my wife will attest to that, and literally any friend of mine in my life.
Right.
I cannot tell you how many times where it's just, yeah, and I'm talking, and yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
No, what time are we leaving?
Yeah.
They're like, and then they're like, when did you check out of this conversation?
Well, don't you think that sometimes we are able to teach the things that we need the most work on?
Totally. In fact, I think there's a saying, you teach what you need to learn the most.
Yeah.
Totally. But it makes sense, though, too, right?
Sure.
Because if my profession involves me consistently focusing on the thing that I need to learn the most, I will be in this forever state of wanting to learn more, because I know this is something that I need to improve on.
Right.
But I think coming back to that, it is, I think it is a lot harder to take these tools and apply them to life. But I think there's something to it. I think there is something to, because acting is really just it's a reflection of life, right? And the actors, like you said, the casting directors who the types of actors they admire are those who are different, distinctive, right? You always hear this from casting. I want to be surprised. I want to be surprised, which is hilarious too, because they're like, do it like this, look this way, do this. Say your name like this, like this, hold this piece of paper up. Yes. You're like, wait, what? Like, but totally surprised me.
Yeah, right.
But it's true, right? Because we want that. We want that because I think it's like life is complex, right? So like when we talk about all these things that are so big and they're so complex, they are complex. And I think if you look at just like life and the universe and all of these things and the complexities of species and organisms and the planets and the solar system, it's like complexity is a part of it. And all of these different ways that things can come about. So what is it that we dig? What's the what are we attracted to? I think it is a little bit of complexity. Yeah. We're attracted to, and if somebody's different, that by definition is a little more complex.
Yes, authenticity is complicated.
Yeah. But even the word like
to it.
Yeah. And so but it is interesting, right? It's like, where I'm this here, but then I'm also this here.
Yeah. And I'm still the same person. Like I'm, but it doesn't, for whatever reason, I've been able to, the rejection, because obviously, as an actor, the rejection is just a lot. And I've gotten used to it. I don't take it personally anymore, right? I'm not able yet to do that because I'm able, as an actor, not that I hide behind it. I don't want to make it sound like that. But you're able to hide behind your acting, right, if you get rejected. Well, Like, I guess, I mean, of course, that makes it sound like I'm a bad actor, but there's just, it's a business. It's like a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to in life, rejection feels different because
Mm-hmm.
it is personal sometimes.
Yeah.
And as an actor, I'm able to say this isn't personal,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah, that's like Don Miguel Ruiz in the Four Agreements. Have you ever read that book?
Years ago, I need to read it again.
It's a great reread.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Reread.
short.
Yeah,
Reread.
it is.
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
short. I have it actually.
But one of the Four Agreements, don't take things personally.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's always so hard, right? You're like, but I'm a person,
Yeah. Right.
so how can I not take personally?
Right. Right.
But then he talks about how we're all living in our own dreams.
Yeah.
And for me to take something personal that you say would be for me to try to live in your dream.
Right.
And I like that concept because none of us are really, nothing's, how do I put this? Your real and my real are not the same.
Right.
Right?
Perception is reality.
Right, and I have a lens I'm looking through, and
Yes.
different filters I'm looking through,
Absolutely.
and all of these things. So really, you and this is where I love talking about acting in life, because we're all living stories, right? I mean, it's your real life, but it's a story nonetheless.
Yeah.
And so, I am living this story, and you're living this story, and our stories might intersect.
Yeah.
But something in your story might not be the same in my story.
Right.
And I think that's where it's this idea of not taking things personally. I love the concept. Again, conceptually, right? Execution is a whole nother thing, actually living it.
Yeah.
But I really do love that concept of not taking things personally. And obviously, like you said, as an actor, you've learned how to do that. I want to talk a little bit more about that too, because you then said you had a life coach.
Yeah. And not to make things like sad. I don't mean to do that, but just for transparency. And it's interesting because again, I think that sometimes the things that we need the most work on, we're best at teaching other people, right? So yes, I worked with her for about 4 years, and she was probably one of, if not the most influential person in my life. And she took her life less than a year ago. And it has rocked my world. Because this is a woman who lived for other people. I think so much so that she didn't do anything really for herself. She was so good at making people whole, but she couldn't do it for herself. And so it's really like messed with my head, to be honest, like losing her, and then the way in which she did it. It was so just awful. It was just awful. And I miss her a lot. But she was just so good at helping the people around. I'm sorry. But yeah, I worked with her for a long time. And she changed my life. And she gave me a backbone. And I would not be where I am now if it weren't for her. And she was just so special. She was just so special. Thank you.
I think it's important because this is real.
Yeah.
This is a real part of life.
Mm-hmm.
This is what makes acting in life a little different.
Yeah.
What happens in acting, when we say cut,
Yeah.
while we might still carry some of these components,
Yeah.
it's done.
Right.
Life doesn't work like that.
Mm-hmm.
Life is with us.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting you talk about that too, in terms of how giving she was.
Oh my God. The most selfless person. The most selfless person that I've ever known.
And almost to the point where she needed to be a little more selfish in terms of...
100%.
Yeah.
And it really had, and again, this gets dark, but it's really shifted my view on suicide. I mean, I lost a very good friend when I was in 7th grade, which I think also did the same way, which I think has also shaped me. But I think a lot of people say suicide is selfish. That's been like a big word I've heard a lot.
Mm.
And this made me realize that it actually isn't. She was so selfless that she didn't have anything else to give to herself. She gave so much to the people around her that she emptied herself to the point that she just felt like she had nothing left. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was no self-care.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, it's like the whole thing I always bring it up on the airplane. Before you put your oxygen mask on your child, make sure to put it on yourself.
Yeah.
And I do think that is a tricky thing with individuals who have that ability to really give.
Yeah.
To really help others be their best self.
Yes.
Robin Williams, right, on the wall out there. Now, there was a lot of components that came into play, but nonetheless, I remember listening to Tony Robbins talk about Robin Williams, and I was at an event. Tony Robbins was there, and this was not too long after Robin Williams had taken his life. And Tony Robbins asked the group, he said, how many of you know who Robin Williams is? Everyone raised their hand. How many of you guys like Robin Williams? Everyone raised their hand. How many of you guys love Robin Williams? Almost everyone raised their hand. And he said, how crazy is that?
Yeah.
You'd be hard-pressed to find any other person where all of you would raise your hand to say that you love this person. But the problem was he didn't know how to love himself.
No.
And that's a tricky component to it.
Yeah. You can have all of the outside praise. I mean, literally the world praised him, right?
Yeah.
This woman, my coach, her name was Diana Pisari. And everybody loved her. You could not love her. Like, literally, it was impossible. She was, like, 4'11", and, like, sassy and beautiful and funny and vibrant and oozed just, like, the empathy to the point where you'd be like, Di, relax. Like, we're not going to be able to solve world problems right now while we're at Starbucks. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was just all the time, just always like, I can't remember, there was something that someone had said something, it was in New York, someone had said something really mean, just, like in New York, people just say shit to each other. And I remember she looked at me, she goes, maybe that's what he needed in that moment. It's like, Di, come on. You know what I mean?
Right.
But, like, again, that was just how she operated. And, like, and again, it was all the external praise that for whatever reason, she couldn't, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a wild thing. Suicide in particular, God, and, just thinking about, this is where...
I took it a dark turn. I'm sorry.
No.
But I just don't know how to talk about her and not...
You didn't take a dark turn. You took an honest turn.
Yeah. Because I can talk about, like, what she gave me. I mean, I worked with her for 4 years, and I was very broken at the time when I started working with her. And she put me back together. Or she helped me put myself back together. She didn't physically do it, but she was by my side while I did it. And that was her gift. Yeah,
and well, clearly because of all the conversations that we've had and the time we've spent talking about training in this industry, something that always stood out was this individual.
Yes.
Right? So there is always darkness.
Yeah.
Right? And this is where I love this concept of polarity.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when somebody says, I wish there was peace with no war. And you go, well, you actually don't need peace if there is no war.
Right.
So it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
There's light, there's dark. But, while she took her life and while it is a part of life, death. Clearly, she was able to tap into her gift.
Oh, every day.
And she was able to affect the lives of so many. And I think our individual ripple effect is something that is so much more powerful than we can possibly fathom.
100%.
And, you know, so you think about someone like her, and you think about all of the lives she touched. And then you think about, and then you think about you, and let's just say all of the lives that you're going to touch. And then those individuals, whether they were a student from Camp Catapult or somebody watching The Resident, who just says, but you know?
Yeah.
But seriously, right?
No, I know. I mean, I do. I think I roll my eyes, but then I think, no, I actually get messages from women who are like, I'm really glad that I see someone that looks like you on TV. Like, I feel more confident today because of that.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Right. And I think, and I don't think it's too much to say that she had that impact on, like, she is a reason why you're able to do that.
Diana.
Yeah, Diana.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She's the person that taught me, like, you do you, boo, right? Like, she's the reason why I was able to shift that mentality into seeing the things I don't like about myself as pluses.
Yeah.
As selling points.
Yeah.
She's the one that did that for me. It wasn't auditioning, it wasn't whatever, it was the other work, right, that had nothing to do with acting.
Yeah.
It wasn't about acting. It was, I literally went through a life coaching certification and also worked with her. But yeah, acting was never part of it.
Right.
But I feel like it completely shaped my acting career and who I am as, not only as a person, but like as an actor, and my whole mentality about this industry in general and this business and how to operate within it.
Yeah.
All her, 100%.
Yeah. And that's so cool, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, not to minimize the impact of death, right? I mean, as you get older, part of getting older is more people die.
Yeah.
You just see more people die.
Yeah.
And eventually, you're one of the ones.
I know.
And that's what we
Can't
know.
escape it.
Yeah. But so it's like, while death is guaranteed, living fully isn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really making an impact on people's lives and sharing our gifts, that's not a guarantee.
Right.
And so the way I see it is, anybody who had the opportunity to do that and did it, they lived.
Yeah.
They lived fully, you know? But thinking about you, and, you know, it's funny because when you talk about embracing who you are, one of the stories I love is our friend Daniel Stein, which is that's how we connected, right? Or was... No, you came in, you connected me with Daniel Stein.
Yes.
Because of Virginia, Minnesota.
Yeah, it's a little movie.
Yeah, and but I remember him talking about that, how your audition, you weren't the character type they were looking for, and then when he saw your audition, he realized, oh no, this is the character. Yeah. So, like, I love that concept. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I remember that audition. You know, sometimes to credit to Daniel Stein, who wrote it, right? He wrote the description in a way that was helpful. Sometimes descriptions aren't always so helpful. But I remember he had, because, you know, I talked about how I kind of go with my instinct a lot of the time, right? I'm just kind of like winging it half the time, usually. And I remember one description in the character breakdown was that she's a bit of a ditz, but then we'll have like a sarcastic zinger when you least expect it. And I'm like, oh man, I totally know like what that is. Like, I kind of feel like that's me, where I'm like kind of come across a little bit like this, but then, you know. And so I just thought she was so funny, and I immediately fell in love with this person, and I immediately was able to picture an environment around me for this audition. Which a lot of the time, you know, scripts don't offer that. Sometimes you have to create it, right? But because of his writing, he made it easier for me, I will say. I think he had pictured, and I could be wrong, but from what I remember, what he wanted was the kind of typical sorority girl. Blonde, like the hot one, right? It wasn't in the description, I don't know, but I think that was kind of what he was picturing, which is not me. You know, I'm a little more like normal, I guess. And, but yeah, that audition, I just remember that audition was so fun and it was so silly. And there was a part where she's supposed to be like drinking wine. She's pregnant, but she's drinking wine, but she's spitting it back out into the glass. And like, and I thought that was so funny. And like, you know, people say don't use props. And I'm like, no, if it works, do it. Why not? Just do it. And so like at one point I was like gargling the wine before spitting it back, and you know, and I just had so much fun with it.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, according to him, he said as soon as I came on the screen, he was like, this is who.
Yeah, I remember him telling me about that experience.
Yeah.
And looking through and then seeing you and just going, this is it.
Yeah.
This is the person.
That I taught him more about the character that he
Yes.
wrote
Yes.
than he even knew.
Right.
Yeah.
But what a wonderful example of embracing your gifts, embracing who you are, and then allowing that to literally transform somebody's concept,
His own character.
that he wrote,
Yeah.
and for you to say, actually, this is the character.
Yeah.
And I think it's a testament to the industry in that we are each bringing a different flavor to the meal.
Yeah.
We're bringing a different
spice.
A different ingredient to it. And when we embrace that, we then can add something to the meal the chef didn't even know they wanted.
Like, ooh.
Yeah.
Lavender?
Lavender.
What?
I love that you went with lavender.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay. So all right. So you go through New York. You do that. You then you meet Diana. Diana. Oh, okay, that's cool. You meet Diana. She helps to empower you, right? You say, and then you get into TV film, right?
Kind of by accident.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because I was in New York. I never did film and TV while I was in New York.
Okay.
I was only auditioning for theater.
Okay.
And so there's this musical. It's called Avenue Q.
I know Avenue Q.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I went in for that show probably more than any other human being ever did, and got real close multiple times. Never quite got it, right? Devastated. So I had finally gone in for the final thing. It's like my fourth production or whatever that they were doing somewhere. Went to like puppet school, right? Didn't get it. Crushed. Went through a breakup. Crushed. And it was at that point that I was like, I'm done. And I remember I was also working at a restaurant in Times Square, and a woman threw a bowl of soup on me. And I literally quit. I've been there for 4 years, and I was like, I'm out. Like, I just was like, I can't do this anymore. And so within that happened, and 2 weeks later, I was back here in Atlanta. I was like, I'm out. I'm done. And I had just decided that I no longer cared about whether it was Broadway or wherever. I just wanted to do what it is I love to do. I didn't care who was in the audience. I didn't care how big the theater was, because my only thought was theater at the time, right? Because I never done film and TV. I didn't care. I just wanted to do it again. So the first thing I booked, I really ate my own words with this, because the first thing I booked was a children's show. And I played chicken.
Okay.
Her name was Chicken. And it was actually very funny. I had a sidekick. He was a cat.
He's just called Cat?
Cat and Chicken. And we were like the villains in this like children's show.
Okay.
It actually was rated one of the top 10 shows of the year that year, which is so bizarre.
What was the name of the show?
The Ugly Duckling.
Okay.
It was at Serenbe, which no longer exists, really, the theater, but it was outside.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Middle of the summer, okay, during the day. We're literally, he built the stage in a pond, okay, and I have these huge floofy pants on, and I'm supposed to be like mocking Paris Hilton. That's kind of like that's like the idea of who this person was. So I was like, wow, this is a way to really get back into what it is I miss doing. Like, it was really humbling.
Yeah.
But it was fun. And strangely, people came to see it, and that was when an agent saw me, Susan Franzo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
From AMT.
Yeah, and I mean, it was silly. It was a lot of improv and I was just ridiculous. I mean, completely ridiculous. And she was like, what's going on? And so I went and I met with them, and again, she said, we don't have anyone like you on our roster. Let's give it a shot. I was like, okay. And my very first audition was in person. It wasn't self-taping. And, like, I had no idea what I was doing. Literally no idea. Like, I'd never been in front of a camera. I had no idea what I was doing. And it was for Alpha Tyler.
Yeah.
And I was the first person she was seeing that day. It was really, really early. And theater, we're taught to dress, like, really nice, no matter what we're going in for, right? Like, we wear the dress and we do our hair, and right? Doesn't matter what the role is, we dress. Mm. And so I'm going in for some little, like, it was like a clerk or something, and I'm in, like, this dress and, like, whatever. And I go in, and she's like, okay, we're going to start with your slate. And I said, I don't know what that is.
You didn't even know what a slate was?
No clue. Literally, they just threw me out there, sink or swim.
Yeah.
Good luck, Godspeed.
Yeah.
But I booked it. And no idea what I was doing. And I remember being on set, and I was, like, throwing things down on the thing. They were like, can you please put the keys down quietly? Like, again, like, they're like, don't have to yell. Like, no concept of, like, the difference between film and TV and theater. But again, that was such an affirming moment for me. Only thing I had in that moment, in that audition, was to be myself. I didn't know what else to do. Like, I didn't have on-camera technique to rely on. I didn't know what a slate was. I didn't know blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, just give this a shot and see how it goes. And I remember Alpha later told me she knew the moment that in the middle of the scene, that I was the person she's like, and I had to sit and watch another 100 people the rest of the day.
Because you were the first one.
Yeah. And she was like, I knew I was going to book you right away. She's like, I liked you. I just really liked you. You know? And that doesn't work every time. We know that, right? Every time that doesn't going to work. But they're going to remember you. Right?
Yeah, and I think what you said, that encompasses, everything we're talking about.
Yeah.
You didn't necessarily have the training. You didn't even know what a slate was.
No. There's like, so I remember with my slate, I was like, hello, I'm Jessica Miesel. I am 5'7". I live here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am with Atlanta Models and Talent. Like, the longest slate ever, because I didn't know.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you were able to be who you are. Mm-hmm. You were able to bring yourself to the story, the character, the room. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where so many actors fall short. Mm-hmm. They're all trying to play the idea of the person who they think they maybe want to be. Yeah. And in turn, they're in this perpetual state of, like, chasing their tail. You know, the dog chasing its tail. Well, maybe if I do this or I do that.
Right. It's got to be something about me. It's me. Something about me needs to change. No. No, the fact that you're thinking that needs to change. Yeah. Not you.
You do you.
Yes.
Boo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I had the acting ability. I knew that.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? I've been acting since I was 15 years old. Like, I knew how to act.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what it meant in front of a camera. But I thought, okay, I'm just going to go in and just be myself and ask questions if I need to.
Yeah. I love it. And you get, and there was that independent 12-year-old who said, I'm going to do it my way.
I'm going to do whatever I feel is right.
I don't need a cafeteria.
Right. Heart on the wall. No.
And you did it. You did it. And then now you know.
But then also, it's also about being able, though, to take direction, right? We can't get too far in that I'm doing the right thing and my way is the only way. Right? It's also about being collaborative.
Yes.
And being open to that.
Yes. But like you said, you were always like, I love that, the concept of if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
And it seemed like at a young age you started to understand that collaboration was important and connecting with others. And you can't collaborate well if you can't be malleable.
Right. And that what you do impacts the people around you.
Right.
Right. And that same thing with acting, right? It's all about, it's not just about you. It's not about you. It's about everybody. It's about the project. Like even in the moment when we're filming something, like if only I'm on camera, sure, I'm the one on camera. But I have to be conscious of the guy who's operating the camera. I can't just do whatever the hell I want and not tell him because he's not going to know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you got to be aware. You got to put everybody in consideration. While also, though, owning who you are in that moment with what your job is. Right?
I love it. That sounds like a perfect time to bring it to an end.
Cut.
I love it. That was so wonderful. Yay. Yeah, that was... Gosh. I'm so glad I got to just talk with you.
I know, me too. This is so great. My soul needed this, I think, after this week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jessica.
I feel like I'm sweating.
Oh, yeah, I'm sweating.
Are you?
Oh, big time. My back is like drenched.
Okay, great, cool.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us on The Unseen Work. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. If you want to learn a little bit more about The Unseen Work, follow us on Instagram at The Unseen Work, and that is UNSCENE.